Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the BCP Licensing Subcommittee. The first item on the agenda is the election of chair. Can I have a nomination from the floor, please?
Councillor Paul Hilliard. I nominate David Flagg as chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hilliard.
I'll second Councillor Mark Howell.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. First of all, housekeeping. Can I ask the clerk just to run through the housekeeping for this morning's meeting? Sinead?
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this is a meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. It's being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council's website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everybody present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited by the Chair. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. If joining remotely, please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on your video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking, and after each party has made their representation, the chair will ask each person if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top right of the screen, or raise your hand if you are in the meeting room. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by the way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Bradley Road under the flyover. Finally, if you're joining remotely, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum, and everyone ensure that their mobile phones and other devices, including laptops, are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, apologies. Do you have any apologies, Sinead?
No apologies that have been received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Members, do you have any declarations of interest with regard to any of the items that are on this morning's agenda? Councillor Hilliard?
Not from me, Chair.
Councillor Howell?
No.
Thank you. Item 4, protocol for public speaking at hearings. A protocol for public speaking at meetings of the Licensing Subcommittee is included with the agenda sheet today for noting. Item 5. Item 5 on this morning's agenda, Bournemouth Electric Club, Broadway Lane, Bournemouth. An application has been received for a new premises licence for the premises known as Bournemouth Electric Club, located at Broadway Lane, Bournemouth. This matter is brought before the Licensing Subcommittee for determination. I will now ask each participant to introduce themselves and state their role. I am Councillor Flagg. I'm the chair for this morning's meeting and a member of the subcommittee. Councillor Hilliard?
Paul Hilliard, member of the Licensing Committee, councillor for Muddyford, Stampit and West Highcliffe.
Thank you. Councillor Howell?
Mark Howell, councillor for Poole Town Centre, Poole Town Ward, and member of the Licensing Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. We are also joined this morning by Councillors Keddy and Chapman Law, who are the reserved members for the meeting. However, they are not required to participate in any of the deliberations this morning. We also have this morning Mrs. Nananka Randall, who is standing in for Sarah Rogers, who is unfortunately ill this morning. Nananka?
Good morning. My name is Nananka Randall. I'm the Licensing Manager for BCP Council, and I'll be presenting this item today.
Thank you. Joanne McNamara?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Joanne McNamara. I'm the legal advisor to the subcommittee today.
Thank you. Sinead O'Callaghan?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Sinead O'Callaghan. I'll be the clerk for the subcommittee today.
Thank you. Next on my list is John Walsgrove. Mr. Walsgrove?
Morning, councillors. Yeah, John Walsgrove, and I'm solicitor for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Walsgrove. Cerise Touvet? You're on mute, Cerise. Okay,
There seems to be some connection issues there, but Cerise is obviously the director of the company and named as the DPS that's made the application. It's not our intention that Cerise will address the committee in any event. So I'm more than happy on her behalf to say that the proceedings can continue with me representing her if her connection is lost.
thank you, Mr. Walsgrove. Unfortunately, we've had the fire alarm test go off. I think it's now complete. Also on this morning's meeting, we have objectors. Sergeant Gareth Gosling.
Good morning, Chair. Sergeant Gareth Gosling, representing Dorset Police.
Thank you, Sergeant. Mr. Andrew Wemyss, Environmental Health.
Morning, Chair. Yeah, Andrew Weems here, Environmental Health Officer representing Environmental Health.
Thank you. Now we also have Diana Williamson, Mrs. Seke Muget, and I understand that you're all three on the same contact on this morning's Teams meeting.
Good morning. My name is Sakai Mujay from 215 Castle Lane, and I've got Diana Williamson from 213 Castle Lane West, and
Linda Wills, 201 Castle Lane.
Thank you very much. I also have on my list Mr. David Fung. Just for information, it would appear that Mr. Fung is not on the Teams meeting, neither is he here in the committee room with us this morning. I understand that.
Confirm that Mr. Fung has been sent a link to enable him to attend if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Yes, Jane.
Thank you, Joanne. We also have on our list this morning objectors who are not attending the meeting, and that is Sandra McDermott and one anonymous objector. Before I run through the procedure, please may I check that all persons who have given notice of their intention to speak have been identified, and any person who wishes to withdraw a representation or wishes not to speak has been identified. If there are no comments, I will take this as correct. And just to confirm that I have the Vice Chairman of the Licensing Committee, Councillor Moore, who is attending the meeting for training purposes and will not take part in deliberations. Moving on then, I will now explain the proposed procedure and order for speaking for the hearing as follows. The Licensing Officer presents the report. Questions of the Licensing Officer by all parties, members of the subcommittee to go first. The applicant will make their application. Questions of the applicant by all parties, members of the subcommittee to go first. Responsible authorities, that's the Dorset Police and Environmental Health, and objectors will make their representations. Questions of the responsible authorities and objectors, members of the subcommittee to go first. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last, that is the objectors, to go first. The hearing will then conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with the legal advisor and the clerk present. Notification of subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. I will now ask all parties to confirm agreement on the proposed procedure or make representations. Unless anyone indicates otherwise, I will take this as confirmed. Thank you. Finally, please may I remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they have already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations. All questions are to be asked through the chair, and there will be no cross-examination of parties. I will now ask the licensing officer to present the report. Mrs. Randall, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have somewhat come into this rather late, so I hope I do it justice for Sarah. So this is an application by ESME-CAM Limited for a new premises licence at the Bournemouth Electric Club, Broadway Lane. They currently benefit from a club premises certificate, which allows them to provide entertainment and alcohol to members. You will note from the report that there was a premises licence in place which lapsed, and some conditions from that licence were then attached to the club premises certificate by way of a minor variation in May 2023. Following information provided to the licensing authority in November 2023, we wrote to the premises regarding their advertising on Facebook, which appeared to offer instant membership and access to events at the club. This is contrary to the required 48-hour period between signing up and then accessing the benefits of the membership of a club premises certificate. The solicitor representing the premises responded to us, and that is detailed in Appendix 5. As you have advised, representations against the application have been received from Dorset Police, Environmental Health or Pollution Control as they were referred to within the report, and from 6 other persons who reside in the area. These representations referred to all 4 of the licensing objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Randall. Members, do members have any questions for the licensing officer? Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just ask, some of the issues have been related to the outside field. So could you just give an overview of how the field is encompassed in the initial premises license and then also the license we're looking at now? Thank you.
I think the premises license covered the outside areas for entertainment. Sorry, this is, like I say, I have come up to this very late in the day, and I'm aware Environmental Health particularly have had complaints about noise from people in people using those fields. So I would suspect Environmental Health will be able to provide more detailed information as they respond to complaints direct from members of the public. But yeah, it's within their licensable area, as it were.
Okay, and then the other question is about the legal entity type thing. So we obviously know there's the Bournemouth Electric Club is a members organisation, and then this ESME is taking on the licensing. But in basic terms, what is the structure? What's the difference between the 2 parties? Thank you.
Yeah, again, I'm really sorry. I can't answer that question direct. I said my officer would have been able to, but I've come in very late in the day this morning. But I expect John Woolsgrove will be able to provide information on the relationship between the club premises licence and the proposed premises licence that will be held by the ESME-CAM Limited.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Sorry about
that. Thank you, Mrs. Randall. If there are no further questions, I will move on and invite Mr. Woolgrove to address the committee, please. Sorry, Mr. Woolgrove, before you commence, are there any questions from any other people who are on the meeting, please? That is questions to the licensing officer. No? Okay, thank you. Mr. Wargrove.
Thank you, sir. I'll try and be as brief as I can, but there is quite a lot of ground to cover. And so in my representations to you, it effectively is divided into 5 parts. The first is crucial, and I will take some care in going through it because it's amendments that we propose to make to the application, having had an exchange of correspondence with the police. And I'll explain why it's only coming to your attention now rather than before this meeting. Then I'm going to talk to you about a little bit about the history of the club, and then go on to inform you about the relationship between ESME-CAN, which has been questioned already, and the future of this members club. Then fourthly, have a discussion around what the issues regarding public nuisance were in the past and give you some reassurances about the future, and then lastly addressing the conditions which the police are suggesting ought to be imposed should you grant the license. So that in essence is the 5 parts of the application. But as I said to you, we are making amendments to the application following a response from the police. So let me take you through those now. And I'll go through them slowly because the residents on this meeting will not be aware of the changes. So in our original application, we applied for the hours and activities that were already permitted on the club premises certificate and the previous lapsed license. So those hours for the sale of alcohol were midnight Sunday to Thursday and 1 AM Friday and Saturdays. And we simply applied to mirror those hours, but we are happy to amend the application. So in terms of alcohol, we're asking for the license to permit alcohol to be sold Sunday to Thursday up to 11 o'clock, and on the Friday and Saturday up until midnight, with New Year's Eve to remain as 1 AM. That has a knock-on effect then to the other licensable activities that we asked for. So in relation to late night refreshment, the application should be amended Sunday to Thursday, late night refreshment until 11:30 PM, and on Friday and Saturday until 12:30 PM, again keeping the 1 AM for New Year's Eve. Then in relation to the licensable activity for films, performance of dance and indoor sports, again all of those should be amended so that it's 11:30 PM Sunday to Thursday, 12:30 on a Friday and Saturday, and 1 AM on New Year's Eve. And then in relation to music, the only licensable activity we're seeking for recorded and live music would be on New Year's Eve, when we would ask for that to go to 1 AM. So in essence, what we're asking for is an hour less all week on the sale of alcohol and 30 minutes less on all of the other licensable activities. The police also questioned the opening hours because in the application we had put 24 hours. And again, that was simply mirroring what the current permission already allowed, but we're happy to amend the application. There's no intention to have these premises open 24 hours. And so we're happy to amend the hours, opening hours, 6 AM until 11:30 PM Sunday to Thursday, and 6 AM until 12:30 AM on a Friday and Saturday. What we also offer is the removal of the request for off sales. So if you grant a license, we are asking that the sale of alcohol is permitted only for consumption on the premises. And that would include a small outside area, which is defined on the plan by the red line. So there would be some external drinking, but just to reassure the residents about people drinking outside, there are conditions offered that those areas, must cease to be used at a certain time. We also revised the CCTV condition to fall in line with what the police asked for, which was the number of days for which it can be recorded. So we're happy for that to be 31. Again, we simply effectively copied conditions over from the current permission, but happy to amend that. And also agree those conditions proposed by Environmental Health in the correspondence we've had for them, and those are set out in the papers, and also those which have been more recently requested in their representation. So a lot of amendments to that application, and I hope that would go a significant way to alleviate the concerns of both Environmental Health and the residents in terms of how the club will move forward. So I know it seemed from some of the residents' letters they were alarmed to see that we might be applying for hours to midnight and 1 a.m. but that was the hours that were already permitted at the club and have been in place for many years. We weren't intended to use them, but we used that current permission on the basis that we knew, we were confident that if that was granted and we ever used it to those late hours, then we would be able to manage it. But the reality is we're quite content to operate the club only to those revised hours. I think, having looked at those amendments, we now look at the history of this club. As you've read in your report and heard this morning, the club has had a club premises certificate in force for decades. The club was actually established in 1936, and I'm led to believe it's had bar facilities at those premises since that time. So the club is fast approaching its centenary and has had licensed facilities for all that time. I'm sure you're probably aware, and by the name of the club, originally it was for staff working at Southern Electric, but obviously over the years that membership has become more diverse and includes membership from the local community. It's very much a family-run club and provides lots of social activities as well as the sports, which of course is the main focus of the club, having the football pitches alongside the clubhouse. So the club run football teams, darts teams, they've got a bowls club next door, Skittles, but they also have other clubs, amateur dramatics, a jazz club, martial arts club. They have slimming world classes. Many of those are early morning, hence the need to open up early. A camera club, to name but a few. And as I said, its membership is now drawn from a wider section of the community, but all local people living in the area. And one of the focuses of the club, not only to provide social welfare to those people in and around the area, but also they raise a lot of money for local charities through various events they have during the year. Looking at the history and set against the 88 odd years that it's effectively been licensed, it seems from the representations that have been made that an issue arose back in 2021. Now, if you've read the papers carefully, you'll know that that's when a premises license was in force, and effectively there was someone responsible for running the bar facilities. And at that point, it seems that some concerns about noise were raised. Those you will have read from the Environmental Health Officer's representation were resolved, and there weren't any further complaints until, I understand, early 2023. So you have that hugely long history prior to 2021 of no issues at all. You then have resolution of the complaints that were made until January 2023. And it's at that point that the license holder, the premises license holder, the license lapsed due to the insolvency of their company. Now, I don't think it's too unreasonable to suppose that if that person was struggling to make the finances work at these premises, that perhaps the standard of management of events and other activities at the club were up to their usual standard, and maybe those standards slipped, which led to some of the complaints made earlier this year. The club obviously then had its club premises certificate in place, but the key thing, the key legal reason around the application for the new premises license is that a members club, under a club premises certificate, the bar facilities have to be run by a committee, and all of the proceeds of those takings have to be applied to the benefit of the members. The difficulty with a members club is, of course, the majority of the people who are capable of managing a bar and running bar facilities will already be in full-time employment, and it makes management of the bar extremely difficult and puts pressure on that committee to ensure that the facilities are managed properly. So the effective outsourcing to a professional licensee requires a new premises license application to get over the issue with the club premises certificate that a committee must run it and all the proceeds of the bar have to be reapplied to the benefit of the members, whereas the new premises license, outsourcing it to a professional licensee, the ordering of stock, the selling of the alcohol and any profits made from that can be commercially retained by those people running the bar. It's important to note, however, that Cerise is indeed the vice chairman of this club. There's no intention to change the way this premises operates. It's still going to be a members club, and it will operate under her professional management, in, as I say, in terms of ordering all the stock, selling the alcohol, training of staff, and she will be able to run those premises in a commercial way to ensure its longevity and stability, which regrettably a committee of the members would not be able to do. And there is a real threat here that if a professional licensee does not come in and operate the bar successfully, that the club itself would end up in serious economic issues, and it's estimated it would have to close. It's not going to survive that long. Environmental health say to you, well, a new license shouldn't be granted because if it's run for commercial gain, that increases the risk of an adverse impact on local residents. And their suggestion is that you leave it as the status quo with the club running its club premises certificate. Well, I say to you, with the greatest of respect, that's not a suitable situation, and that's not one which actually favours the residents, because of course the club premises certificate, for a start, has later hours, operating hours, and as I've described, you would have the bar and the facilities being operated by a committee who may not be able to dedicate all of their time and resource to the management of those premises, as opposed to looking at Cerise and her company being an experienced licensee and having trained staff and being able to run that premises full time with much reduced hours from the club premises certificate. The issue that Environmental Health raised with you is that with the club premises certificate, that would bring an end to private hire and events. But I can tell you that it wouldn't. A members club is perfectly entitled to hire out their facilities to others. That does not bring into question its bona fides as a members club, unless, of course, for the majority of the time they're hiring out their facilities rather than making them available for the benefit of the members. But that wouldn't be the case. So there would still, under the club premises certificate, if you refuse this application, there still would be events, private hire events at the premises, which would need to be managed by that committee. So looking at that complete history of the club, the purpose of the club, and reassuring you that the club is there for the future, and this is simply to allow the economics of the running of the club to work in their favour to provide its longevity, I ask you to attach great weight to the fact that it has operated for so long without any issues. And it would appear to me, on the evidence that I have read and discussed, that the fault of previous incidents lies with the premises licence holder, which lapsed and has no longer anything to do with these premises whatsoever. So the key thing is, it's a new application, but it does not mean a new style of premises. It's going to be a members club. It'll continue in exactly the same way it has done before. The only thing my client has in mind at present to change going forward would be to offer Sunday lunches, which would be open to members of the public, because they feel there is a potential for good commercial revenue for the provision of Sunday lunches without having any negative impact on the local community, because of course that's just a food-based business during the day. So able to provide extra revenue, but with no negative consequence to those locally. So just dealing with the public nuisance element, fourth point of my presentation, and one of the councillors asked about the playing fields. They're not actually part of the current club premises certificate, and nor would they be part of the premises licence. So when my clients met with local residents back in the early part of 2023, following the effective second round of complaints about noise, the residents' principal concerns were about the shouting and swearing at football matches and the kicking of balls against fences. You'll probably be aware that the club is very close proximity to residential properties, and certainly those new properties built in 2015 adjacent to the club are incredibly close, bordering the football pitches. And it's not unsurprising that people using the sports fields playing football are going to occasionally have footballs knocking into the fences. I'm incredibly surprised that the developers in building those houses didn't put in any measures to protect effectively the residents from, you know, that potential, which is it's an obvious potential. If people are playing football and there's a fence, the ball's likely to be kicked against it. The developers now, under the agent of change principle, would have had to have put in measures to protect those residents bordering the football pitches, with putting up fences that would, or tree lines that would protect that issue. So anything to do with the playing of football and the sports fields has nothing to do with this application and nothing to do with the licensable activities. That said, I want to reassure you, but more importantly, reassure the residents on this call, that going forward, with Cerise managing the bar facilities, she and her staff will also have responsibility for managing those playing fields and ensuring that there is no nuisance to local residents. So with the previous complaints that have been made, there will be obviously a concerted effort to ensure that it hasn't been an issue going forward. And as I've said, you know, it's been over 80 years since this club has been in existence, seemingly without any problems until the very recent past, with that licence holder who is now no longer with the club. So I know Environmental Health have referred you to a recent event which took place at the club, and obviously the club would like to extend its apologies that in fact that event should have taken place in the main hall, and due to communication errors, the person responsible on the evening for running that event set it up in the Butler Suite. We're not accepting that there was a public noise nuisance, because we did have patrols, the club did have patrols in place at the residents' properties to ascertain whether the music could be heard or not. But we accept that certainly those flashing lights that are shown you probably haven't seen it, but I can just describe it to you in the video that was sent to Environmental Health. There's the curtains are not closed, the flashing lights can be seen. We accept that that's a problem which should not have occurred, and certainly wouldn't do in the future with my client having responsibility under the premises license, because they would not use the butler suite for any event. The main hall would be used for that, and my instructions are that whenever things have taken place in that main hall, there haven't been any issues of complaints. It does seem to be that the butler suite is the most critical, that being the nearest to local residents, and with a glazed frontage, obviously has the problem of noise leaking out. So you will have seen that the Environmental Health has said, well, only background music should be played in the butler suite, and we agree entirely with that. And if you want to impose that as a condition, we have absolutely no issues with that, because if we're granted the license, we are not going to be using the butler suite for any sort of function in the future. Now, lastly, just in relation to the conditions requested by the police, let me say this, that it's not the case that by not agreeing to them, those are not steps which we are taking. Indeed, all of those measures which the police have put forward would be part of my client's due diligence in operating the licensed premises. It's whether or not it's appropriate and necessary to have them as conditions on the premises license, which is the question, not to say, well, that's not appropriate, we're not going to do it, because as I say, we would have in place all of those things in any event. So just running through those sort of very briefly, the first one I think was requesting a condition that they have written risk assessments for SIA. Well, I can assure you that that would be part of the compliance. They would always risk assess on an event whether door staff were required or not. But does that really need to be a condition of the licence, that a record of that written risk assessment must be kept at the premises and made available for inspection? It will be done, but as I say, does it really need to be a condition? Should we be overloading a premises license with lots and lots of conditions which effectively are put in place by the licensee as part of their due diligence? What purpose is it really serving? That's a question for you to decide. Equally, the pub watch membership. Again, my client, as I've experienced licensee, they run Cameron's in Christchurch, which is a late night venue with a license till 4 a.m. And again, that's in a mixed commercial residential area. They're very used to running late night venues in residential areas, and are members of that local pub watch. So it's not a case that they wouldn't be a member and wouldn't go along to pub watch, but in my view, it shouldn't be a condition on the premises license. Indeed, the Institute of Licensing have recommended that condition is not one which is appropriate to put on a premises license, bearing in mind it's a voluntary scheme, and bearing in mind the members of pub watch can in fact exclude other members themselves. So if it was put on a condition, there is a possibility that they could be, albeit a very small possibility, but a possibility nonetheless, that they could be voted off the pub watch scheme, and then they're in breach of their premises license. So I would ask you not to put that on as a condition, but to be reassured that they would play an active part in that scheme. The officers asked for accredited staff training. Again, Cerise at Cameron's provides accredited staff training. In my view, it doesn't need to be put on as a condition. You should leave it to your licensees to ensure that staff are trained. Yes, of course, have a condition on the license that they must be trained, but why the need to have that as accredited training? Why is Cerise, who's a very experienced licensee, why is she not competent to provide training herself? The next one is the really the one which I would say you certainly should not impose and is onerous, and that's the one for a personal license holder to be present at the premises at all times. You've seen from the application, albeit amended, that this premises will be open 7 days a week for a considerable number of hours. To have a personal licence holder there at all times, you're going to need to cover it with 5 or 6 different personal licence holders to cover all those different days and all those different hours. And that's just not appropriate. The Licensing Act does not require a personal licence holder to be present at all times. The Section 182 guidance, in fact, reiterates that there's no requirement for a personal licence holder to be present at all times. What you're looking for is compliance and due diligence, where a responsible licence holder will have trained their staff, and when there is not a personal licence holder on the premises, to ensure that there is a responsible member of staff in charge of those premises at the time. It is an expensive process to undertake the training, secure the personal licence, and if there's a turnover of staff, the possibility of breaching that condition is relatively high. In my experience, that condition is reserved for premises which are extremely high risk, which we say this is not. It's not like a city centre nightclub. And also we say there is insufficient evidence of crime and disorder which would require you to have a personal licence holder there at all times. What I can reassure you is, of course, Cerise will have either herself or another personal licence holder at the premises when there are activities which pose a higher risk. So if there is a private hire event, for example, say for a wedding reception, then a personal licence holder, of course, would be there. They would have carried out the risk assessment and almost certainly have SIA door staff there. My view is that should be left to the licensee. There's no need for you to impose conditions in that regard, placing that obligation on them. And lastly, they've asked for a dispersal policy. And again, of course, my client will have a dispersal policy in place on which all their staff will be trained. And when SIA supervisors are employed, they will also be trained on what the dispersal policy involves, which is effectively ensuring that everybody moves away from the premises at closing time as quickly and as quietly as possible under the supervision of staff. Again, all I ask is, does that really need to be a condition of the premises licence requiring written documentation to be made available? My view is that it's not. So I apologise, it has taken some time, but this, of course, is a crucial application in the sense that your determination will effectively decide the future of this club as to whether it can carry on and, you know, look forward to its centenary in 12 years' time. So I do ask you to grant the licence with all the amendments that we've made, which we believe truly address all the concerns which have been raised by environmental health, the police, and local residents, and that you can be confident that with an experienced licensee such as Cerise, that the problems that have been in the past will not come forward in the future, and that the local residents can again enjoy a situation where this club only has a benefit to the community and not a negative impact, as has been written in more than one of the letters of representation, saying that the club had existed for many years without a problem. You wouldn't even know it was there, I think someone was quoted as saying. So thank you for taking the time to listen to the application. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions on behalf of my client, but also Cerise is here should we need her to chip in with any answers as well. So thank you for listening, councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Walgrove. I've just been advised that Mr. David Fung is now online in the call. So welcome, Mr. Fung. Right, next point is, do members have any questions for Mr. Walgrove at all? Councillor Howe.
Yeah, this may be a clarification from the officer initially that I need, but on the licensing application, it says that and I forgive people, this is the first time that I've sat on an application of this nature, but the application says that the premises can only be open to 12, but the late night refreshment is till 1 p.m. So does that mean that late night refreshment can only be served to 12, or is the premises in that circumstance deemed to be not include the off sales element of it, access to that?
Thank you, Councillor Hell. My understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Walgrove. My understanding was that you were prepared to offer late night refreshment to finish at 12 o'clock on the revised application. Is that correct?
Well, so Sunday to Thursday, 11 to 11:30 p.m, Friday and Saturday till 12:30 a.m. In other words, the closing time of the premises. So the late night refreshment literally is to be able to provide a hot cup of tea or coffee should someone want a hot drink before they leave the premises. It's not for food or takeaway food or anything of that nature. It's literally, you know, if someone wants a cup of coffee, to be able to provide that during that half an hour drinking up time. So sale of alcohol is going to 11. There'll be a 30-minute drinking up time till close at 11:30. So we want to be able to provide a hot drink should someone ask for it.
I just want to be clear. I just want to be clear, Mr. Walgrove, because I recorded what you said with regards to what you offered up with the police, and the late night refreshment I've recorded as 11:30 and 12 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays, and you've just said 12:30. So can I just be clear? Is it 12 or 12:30 you're offering?
I'm very sorry if I said 12 before. I meant to say 12:30, so up to the closing hour, which would be 12:30 on a Friday, Saturday.
Thank you, Mr. Walgrove.
Thank you. If I could just come, it doesn't quite answer my question, which in the application form, section L says the premises will only be accessible until midnight on Friday and Saturday. So does that mean that you can't serve late night refreshment until
no? So
that time?
The opening hours are on the application form were 24 hours. So 1 minute past midnight until midnight the following day. So 24 hours, and we've said, and that's what was on the original club premises certificate and previous license. But we've said no. Put some amended opening hours, which would be 6 a.m. until 11:30 p.m. Sunday to Thursday, and then 6 a.m. until 12:30 a.m. on a Friday, Saturday. And then the late night refreshment falls in line with those opening hours, 11:30 and 12:30.
Thank you, Mr. Walgrove. Mrs. Randall, did you want to add to that at all?
I was just going to reiterate that the L, its start time is 00:01, which is 1 minute past midnight, until midnight. So it's one minute past, and then it goes round to the midnight. So it's 24-hour opening, as indicated in section L of the application. Yeah.
I think so, Chair, that sort of moved on somewhat with the document that the police circulated yesterday, and I think with Mr. Walgrove. So the mediated amendments are opening hours 0600 hours until 23 hours Sunday to Thursday, 0600 hours until 00:30 hours Friday to Saturday. So 30 minutes past midnight. So that's been mediated on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Obviously, the important bit is the licensable activity times. The opening times of the premises aren't licensable per se. They're just for information. But it's the licensable activity times that we need to obviously make sure we get right.
Thank you, Mrs. Randall. Did you have any further questions, Councillor Howe?
No, I didn't, although I understand that I was supposed to have received a note, an email from the police yesterday, so which I don't appear to so if somebody could send that to me, that would be great. I can read it now.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Hillier, do you have any questions for Mr. Walgrove at all?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Walgrove, obviously there's the club premises certificate, which I think, as you said in your speech, that there's discrepancies between the times Are you looking to update that certificate while you're doing the license, just for clarity and consistency?
No, so the two things are entirely separate. So the club premises certificate is not part of this application. Obviously, we're just applying for a new license for the reason that I've said, because it will allow a professional licensee to come in, run the bar facilities, be able to apply the profits from that bar as they see fit, as opposed to the commercials being handled by a committee of part-time members who, you know, effectively don't have the time to do that. So no, it's not changing the club premises certificate. That's not before you.
Right, because obviously looking at it, it breaks into the different prevention of crime about protecting children, whatever. So the first thing under prevention of crime 2.2 says entry to the club should be controlled by a door person, and obviously that was one of the key things the police are looking for, is a SIA registered door person. So that's why I'm asking the question if you're aligning them.
Yeah, the police aren't asking for a condition which says we must have doormen. They're asking for a condition which says we must carry out a written risk assessment, whether we need them or not. And for the vast majority of the time, the assessment has concluded that you wouldn't need SIA registered doormen to, you know, on a normal evening when just members are coming along to enjoy the facilities, you wouldn't want or need an SIA doorman. However, you know, as I said, if the hall were hired out for, say, a wedding reception, then that is an occasion when you would want to have an SIA doorman. So your risk assessment would conclude, yes, we need them because we need to control access to that event, because obviously it's only for the person who's hired facilities and their guests, and also to ensure the members, you know, are able to use the other parts of the premises quite happily as well, and then to ensure obviously there's no nuisance caused to the local people. So the condition they're asking for is for a risk assessment.
Yeah, because the other question on the premises certificate, like 2.38, and you're obviously, your client's looking to generate more business. 2.38 says 18th birthday party shall not be permitted on the club. So that's quite a wide ranging. So that's why I thought you'll be looking at that. But moving on, the other thing, and I think you said in your presentation, was that you were willing to accept all the recommendations from environmental health. So is that right under page 41 of the report? It might be different numbers, but so this is where they're saying about the no external drinking after 2100 hours in the designated seating area, butler suite, all windows and external doors closed after 2100 hours, etc. Is that what you've confirmed that you accept? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it is.
So can I just double check? That was a question I was going to ask, because there's in the report from Environmental Health, there's some provisions that suggest that that's been agreed, and that's at pages, apologies, page 38 of the report. So no external drinking after 2100 hours, etc. But then at page 41 of the report is what Environmental Health say: if a licence were to be granted, would the committee be minded to grant the application with the additional terms? And those terms at page 41 are actually more than those terms that are suggested, that are agreed. So can we just clarify that your client is agreeable to the terms at page 41 of the report?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hilliard. Councillor Howell.
Yes, having now received and read the latest police letter, I'd just like to ask a question about the off sales.
Yeah.
Having not visited the site before, then I'd welcome a bit more clarification about how the off sales will work and the areas that will be designated for the consumption of those off sales
Yeah.
and the timings.
Mr. Walgrove?
Yeah, just bear with me. I'm just seeing if the plan we submitted is included in the application. I'm not sure it is. Oh, yes, it is. So if you turn to page number 30 of the report, that shows a plan of the building, and you'll see on there a red line drawn around the outside of the building, and that is where we would like, so at the bottom of the plan, that in fact is the seating outside of the butler suite. So that is the butler suite, the room immediately above that outside seating. But the intention is to create a seating area around the other side of the premises as well in the future, with a decking, which is why we've outlined a larger area outside, so that people can, there can be some flexibility in where people are seated for drinking, so that my client can then manage events better to ensure that local residents aren't disturbed by people who are drinking outside of the premises. So it's quite a modest outside area. And originally we'd asked for off sales so that people watching the football would be able to take drinks with them to go and watch the game. But obviously, you know, the police raising that as an issue, and there being residents having written in saying, you know, there is unacceptable behaviour from sort of spectators, we immediately decided that that wouldn't be a good idea. So we have withdrawn that from the application. So nobody will be going onto the field with drinks. But essentially, at the moment, and in the past, the outside seating area at the butler suite is where people would have gone and had a drink. Now, what we've said is we've agreed to the time limit on the external drinking, and obviously conditions relating to people then going out to smoke thereafter once the external drinking time has expired, to make sure that's managed properly as well.
Thank you, Mr. Walgrove. Just a question from the legal representative, Mr. Walgrove.
Mr. Walgrove, maybe I've misunderstood this. So on the original application, you were looking for off sales for everywhere within the red. Is that right? Consumption of alcohol in the red area in the original application.
No, the original application is for the sale of alcohol for consumption on the premises within that red line. So effectively, the external drinking would be part of within the premises.
Yes, but within the red line.
Yeah, and that's important, because having premises licensed for consumption on the premises, it does give right of access to officers of the local authority as well as the police, whereas if that outside area wasn't licensed, there wouldn't be the same lawful rights of entry for council officers into those spaces.
So, and then, but in the mediated agreements that were sent through yesterday, it said the applicant has agreed to restrict the consumption of alcohol to smaller defined spaces immediately adjacent to the building as denoted on the plan.
Yeah,
so how does that marry with the...
Yeah, well, the red line is what's denoted on the plan.
Is that what you're saying? Right.
So what isn't shown on that plan is the extensive playing fields, which is where consumption with off sales could have taken place. So all the football pitches and all around the field. So all we have done on the licence plan is produced a plan of the building and the external area which we would want to be able to put tables and chairs out from time to time. It's not that that red line denotes an area where everybody's going to be drinking outside there all the time. It's for my clients to manage, but have more than one space. Because I think in the past, the club have just used the external space outside the butler's room, which is the one which has caused, I understand it, all of the issues in the past.
So maybe it's me just misunderstanding, and I apologise for that, but on the agreed amendments, it's to a smaller defined space immediately adjacent to the building. What's that smaller defined space?
Well, in my view, that's the plan we submitted with the red line, which
Right,
clearly
okay.
says
Yeah,
sale of
that's
alcohol
fine. I
for
just
consumption
wasn't.
on the premises. Whether the
so that's
police
the
have
red line.
interpreted that to mean anything differently, my understanding in that exchange of correspondence were that we were excluding the playing fields from any consumption of alcohol.
So the reference to defined space is still within the red line.
On page 30.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
But Sergeant Gosling may wish to jump in and confirm whether that was his understanding of the exchange or not.
Can I still have some questions myself, Mr. Wargrove? Firstly, just a quick one. Does your client have any dealings currently with the club in terms of running the bar at all?
She's on the committee at the club, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I'd like you to cast your mind forward to our sunny summer days when we have an under 16 5-a-side, 7-a-side tournament covering most of the grassed area. How is your client going to manage the fact that alcohol does not get taken onto the football pitch?
Yeah, that will be to ensure that she's got staff and volunteers from the club to advise customers. Obviously, there'll be notices displayed to say that alcohol cannot be consumed on the playing fields, and there will be vigilance from committee members as well as her staff to ensure that that does not take place.
And can I just sort of add to that? Does your client have a written policy for this purpose?
There isn't currently a policy in place, but obviously there would be. So for any event that the club puts on, whether that's inside or outside on the playing fields, as part of that, if you grant the license, Cerise would have to consider what the effects of operating the bar on those days were and what she needs to do in terms of managing it with the relevant numbers of staff, again, whether SIA are needed, whether volunteers from the club are needed, and if they are, then she would obviously need to train them to say, this is what I need you to keep an eye out for, not only just consumption on the pitch, but obviously the potential for passing alcohol to people under the age of 18. So, I mean, that's in that sense, it's not something new for the club, because obviously they've had events and days on the fields where they have managed that, and Cerise is confident that she'll be able to manage it in the future with their cooperation and working with them.
Thank you for that, Mr. Wargrove. I have no further questions. Can I open it up to those that are in attendance this morning?
Chair, could I just ask a quick question?
Oh, another question from the legal.
Apologise. So your client is vice chair, you said, at the committee. I just wondered how long she'd held that role.
Cerise, are you still there? You'll have to confirm that. I think it was middle of November, but you may have lost connection. Fairly recently.
Sergeant Gosling, did you have any questions for Mr. Wargrove at all?
Yes, Chair, just the one. I know that there's been mention of the intent of the licence holder operating the premises as a members club. I just wonder if Mr. Walsgrove might be able to provide some clarity around that, certainly in relation to whether that is an undertaking or whether that's intended to be conditioned to the licence or otherwise enforceable, and what that might look like. I just want to be clear, because I think it is quite pivotal, certainly for the residents, when the premises is more open to the public. That is when we generally experience more concerns, shall we say.
Thank you, Sergeant. Mr. Wargrove?
Yeah, I mean, if you think it's appropriate to have a condition on the premises licence relating to it being a members club, then certainly that's something we could offer, because as I say, that is not something which is going to change. So you could consider a condition which says this license shall only be valid at all times. The Bournemouth Electric Club remains as a members only club, or something along those lines.
Thank you, Mr. Walgrove. Can I ask Mr. Wemyss, did you have any questions at all for Mr. Walgrove?
Thank you, Chair. No, in fact, Sergeant Gosling has just covered one. It's this clarity about, is it a members club or is it a full-on license? Can people can you just advertise an event and have anyone come along, run it as a pub, if you like? Now, I'm not entirely clear on this hybrid where you've got a members club and a full-on license. So any clarification on that and how you would control and run it, you know, with the same sort of conditions that are appropriate for a members club? That's my question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Did you want to address that again, Mr. Walgrove?
I will, because I mean, that is an accurate description of what it is in terms of it being a hybrid. And I've explained to you it needs to be, because it needs to be commercially viable to allow the members club to continue in existence. So what we don't want is necessarily all of the conditions relating to it having to be a members club and excluding anybody else from coming along to those premises, because as I've said, one of the key parts of the business plan going forward is to be able to offer Sunday lunch, and that's not just to members. That would be, or they would want it to be, open to members of the public. But what the assurance we are giving you, what it won't turn into is just literally a pub like the one opposite the club, where anybody can come in at any time for a drink. We don't think that the premises license needs to be conditioned in any way, because with the change to the hours, that's not going to have any impact on, or negative impact on, the local residents, even if, for example, they did completely change tact and say, right, well, all of the members have resigned, there's no members club, so we are just going to open it up as a normal bar. Opening it up to those times and being managed properly still would have no negative impact. But what I'm telling you is the club is very important. It's the whole crux of the application. They've been there 88 years. They want to continue there. They're in a difficult financial position, which has been made clear to all the responsible authorities in meetings before, that this is one option that they believe and Cerise believes will be successful, so that the club's commercial viability, the repair costs to the building, all those sorts of things can continue, so that the Bournemouth Electric Club can continue. You know, it is a very valuable community asset which faces closure. You are a licensing committee and you have to look at purely the impact on the licensing objectives. And I would say to you, if there's any concern about whether it's a members club, not a members club, even if it's not a members club, granting a license for those hours with those conditions with an experienced licensee is not going to have any negative impact anyway. So I'm not sure why it would be such a fundamental discussion. But rest assured, you know, this is all about the club surviving.
Thanks, Mr. Walgrove. Right. I have another question from one of the members this morning first.
Yes, Mark Howell. I just to clarify on that point, because you did say that you would be happy for that the fact it being members clubs be included in the condition, and then you said it's not necessary. But what would that actually mean in law? A members club, in our considerations, would that mean that members would only be able to buy drinks and have guests. I mean, it seems to me that the way that you've been talking about members club doesn't in any way restrict in your mind how an individual could walk off the street and purchase a drink, but presumably there is a definition of a members club that prevents that.
Can I ask Mrs. McNamara just to try and guide us on that?
There is a definition what a club certificate is, and that is that only members or their guests can purchase alcohol, and that in order to be a member, you've got to have made your application, I think 48 hours before. So I suppose what you're asking, Councillor, how practically would that work if there was a condition that it could only, the licence would only be valid whilst while Bournemouth Electric remains as a members only club?
Yeah, it seems to me a bit odd. The applicant has just suggested that they might accept a condition that it's a members club, because the fact that only members and their guests can buy drinks would seem to harm the viability points that you've been strongly making.
I think what that means is that the operation of the club is as a members club only, so that the premises are a members club, but the premises licence, if granted, is a premises licence that doesn't require alcohol to be sold in accordance with just that club certificate. I think that may be what you're saying, is it, Mr. Walsgrove?
Yeah, so effectively, with the club premises certificate, you have to satisfy a licensing committee that you are a bona fide members club, and the rules of that club can allow all sorts of different authority to sell alcohol. So the rules of the club might just restrict it to members. It might restrict it to members and guests. It might allow for facilities to be hired to non-members, which Bournemouth Electric Club do. So it's not just members and guests that use the facilities currently under the club premises certificate. It's a question of whether there is a bona fide members club in existence. So what I was suggesting, you could add a condition to this premises license which said it's only valid while there's a bona fide members club, operating from these premises, which should reassure you that its primary use is as a members club, although on occasion it will be used to either hire facilities out for private hires, or, as I've suggested, for the Sunday lunches where any member of the public could come in. So with that condition, that technically would not prohibit them from allowing anybody 7 days a week to come into the premises and just purchase a drink. But that is not how it's going to be operated. But that we don't want conditions saying every 7 days a week alcohol can only be sold to members and guests, because that even goes beyond what the club premises certificate permits. So I hope that's clearer. It reassure you with that condition that there always has to be a members club there, otherwise the license is invalid, but it also allows my clients some flexibility to take advantage of the Sunday lunches, for example, to make this commercially viable, to allow that club to continue. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong here with people coming and making this commercially viable and putting money over the bar, as long as you're satisfied it's run without any detriment to the local residents. And I'm saying, with a professional team who are experienced in running a very late night premises in Christchurch, which is close to residential properties, that is what I'm saying should give you the confidence. You'll want to know it's still a members club, and adding that condition should give you that comfort, knowing that a license can be reviewed.
Thanks, Mr. Walgrove. I'm going to give the objectors now the opportunity to ask questions. I notice you have your hand raised, Mr. Fung. Would you like to ask Mr. Walgrove your question, please?
You guys can hear me correctly? Yes, that's fine. Yeah, I believe that. my concern basically, because I am a qualified accountant, so I don't need to say that, but I work a lot of time at home. My concern now, because you mentioned, I mean, I'm still quite confused about, is it for the club member, is it for the local people, or for the general public? Because of, I mean, is also because the club having financial difficulty. That's a very difficult to classify. Are they club member or are they because they need to expand for the general public? And it's quite difficult to monitor or even policing or even the staff, have they got them enough manpower to doing it? Because my past experience, you can attract some people, they can doing the drinking in the pub, and then they letting children running around, shouting, screaming, chucking rubbish into my garden, doing some dangerous like harming themselves or harming me. So I mean, I don't want to talk about the football people shouting, swearing, and things like that. That's another relevant things. That's quite concerning, basically, and because the at the moment the license or the agenda is a bit confusing at the moment, and I'm quite worried is because the financial being raised or there's a financial difficulty. I'm not saying they're not trustworthy, but what I'm trying to say is quite difficult to monitor. Are they the public member or are they not public member? Are they breaching the license? Are quite difficult to prove to finding who they are and what they are. But the problem is because I'm living next to the club. If I show it that, if I telling them my past experience, like you shouldn't live here, or you should move, or I've been people chucking eggs into my garden. I mean, I'm a bit worried about like if more people coming in. I mean,
Okay, Mr. Fung, I think we've got the gist of your concerns. Would you like to address that at all, Mr. Wargrove?
Just simply to say, as I said in the early part of my representation, that nothing really changes in terms of who is going to be using the club going forward. The key difference between a club premises certificate and a new premises license is the way in which the bar is managed and how the money, the income and expenditure from the bar is accounted for. Under a club premises certificate, it has to be done by a committee, a specific bar committee of the club, and all of the proceeds have to be accounted back to the members of that club. Whereas if a new premises license is granted, that will mean the bar does not need to be managed by a committee. It will be managed by Cerise and her staff. And in relation to the funds, the income and expenditure, that will be accounted through her company, some of which will be applied back to the benefit of the members, and some of which she will take effectively as commercial profit. But there'll still be high, you know, if the license isn't granted, there'll still be the private hire facilities, so there'll still be the same events that have happened in the past. So what we're saying is it's better to have a license that has someone who is solely accountable and who is effectively a professional licensee and able to run these premises much better than they have been run in the past. It's not a free-for-all of everybody can come along and use these facilities, but we do need a little bit of flexibility. That's where the hybrid comes in, to make it commercially viable. There aren't enough members attending every day to be able to keep the club going, which is why they do hire out the hall for functions, etc., to raise a bit of necessary income to maintain, you know, the sports pitches, the pavilions, etc., etc.
Thank you, Mr. Wargrove. Did you have another question at all, Mr. Fung?
yes, actually, I think you mentioned the club already try to put professional people in already, or more concerned at the general public. I think recently, or my neighbor been make a complaint to Angel Hill on the 8th of December regarding the noise and the lights and things like that. Because they're quite close to the club. Even I heard it, but I mean, I think because I probably too late to complain, make a complaint of it. I don't want to do a backlog for that. But it's always like what the club promises and what the club performing is always that's a I mean that's a difference, and it's a quality assurance. Is what we not. I'm not saying not trustworthy, but it's always a quality assurance, lack of manpower and things like that. So that's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Mr. Pang.
Just to comment on that, obviously I've not been involved for very long with the club, but I understand and have read all the concerns about previous promises, etc., etc. That's where I say this has an advantage, because if you've got a club premises certificate which is run by a committee, those, I can tell you now, those committee members are elected members and they will change. And so you may get one committee promising something, and then the following year that committee might not be there anymore. It might be completely different people. Whereas with this premises license, that's the whole issue of accountability. Everybody knows that Cerise is the director of the company and she's the designated premises supervisor. So you have one individual who is accountable and who, you know, if they're making promises and those promises aren't kept, then they can be held to account. They can lose the license. They could be prosecuted if they were in breach of conditions, etc., etc. For me, you don't get that same reassurance with a committee running it under the club premises certificate. So I know you know, are obviously approaching what I'm saying with some skepticism based on previous experience, but all I can do is try and reassure you that, you know, I've been doing this job 30 years. I've dealt with hundreds of members clubs, and having a professional licensee with a license is much better than a committee running it under a club premises certificate.
Thank you, Mr. Walgrove. Do any of the other objectors present at the meeting this morning have any questions for Mr. Walgrove? Mrs. Randall.
Yes, sorry, I put my hand up. I'm just don't want to muddy the water, but on the application form M, the application does say the intention would be for the club to surrender the certificate, the club premises certificate, in the event of a satisfactory premises license is granted, as they are returning to an arrangement for the applicant to operate the facilities on behalf of the club. The club would remain in existence, and the facilities are prima facie for the benefits, but they would not. But they have said that they would surrender the club premises certificate.
Thank you, Mrs. Randall. Right, if there are no further questions from the objectors, I'd like to move on to ask the responsible authorities, first of all, Dorset Police. Sergeant Gosling, would you like to address the committee, please?
Good morning, Chair, and Happy New Year to the members. I think being the 3rd of January, I think we can still say that, just about. I'll try and be brief. I know that, unfortunately, you only received the documentation yesterday, from what I'm hearing. Due to the festive period, there must have been delays because it was submitted on Thursday last week. But I do apologise that you've received that so late. Hopefully you'll appreciate that we have undertaken some mediation with Mr. Walsgrove, which I'm really grateful for, and made some considerable progress, hopefully in the interests of the local community. I'll start just by giving a bit of a background. This club has been there for some time. As a PC working in that area, I'm familiar with the premises and the variety of activities that take place there, both during the daytime and nighttime. More recently, to say that it's had a bit of a checkered sort of experience, I think we've had some really good times where we've been able to engage really well with the members of the club to gain their support for ensuring that the licensing objectives are being promoted. But there have been times, unfortunately, where we've felt let down, I think, by the members of the committee, and Mr. Walsgrove has already conveyed some of the disadvantages of where we do have committees responsible for clubs, and in particular with the licensed provision. I think the concerns remain for us with regards to firstly how well the club interacts with the local community, and I think by virtue of the fact that you received a number of representations from the local community, I think that demonstrates. I think Mr. Fung.
No,
That's it.
so-
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Gosling. Those in attendance, could you turn your microphones and cameras off, please? And I will, if you wish to speak, I can then move forward. Sorry, Sergeant, please carry on.
No worries. Thank you. So I think just reiterating that point around how well the club interacts with the local community, I completely understand, and I think we're all grateful for clubs that can provide social enrichment for a wide variety of different activities for the community. But I want the committee members today to focus on the areas that cause us and I think the residents and our partners in environmental health the most concern, and that is that licence provision, particularly during the late evening. I think we are focused there really on private functions and making sure that they are being delivered in the interests of the wider community and not simply to ensure the viability of the club, which I accept is important, but we have to make sure that the club performs in a way that gives consistent confidence to the neighbours that they are not likely to be affected adversely by that activity. We've talked about conditions, and I won't go through that again because hopefully you've had an opportunity now to digest what has been agreed, and Mr. Walsgrove has kindly addressed some of what we have agreed. I think it's quite pivotal that there will be no longer any off sales, so that ensures that there will be a far greater control, in our opinion, with regards to where the alcohol can be consumed, to ensure that there is sufficient control over that. Of course, it is outside of our power, and indeed I would argue your control as well, in relation to the other antisocial behaviour in the park area. So with regards to the football fields, etc., we need to make sure that we're concerned with trying to manage the licensable activities as well as we can. And that really brings me on to the conditions that remain with regards to some of the areas that Mr. Walsgrove's reluctant to incorporate into the licence. And I have explained very briefly in relation to each of those proposed conditions why I think they should be attached to the licence. But I'll give you as well a little bit of context behind that. Mr. Walsgrove has drawn a comparison with regards to this premises and perhaps a town centre location. And I think, naturally a town centre location would benefit from far greater footfall, far greater diversity of customers and clients. But this premises has its own challenges in that it is surrounded by dwellings, residential properties, and also is used for such a wide variety of activities. And I want you to discount all the sporting activities and the health activities, and really just focus on the variety of different reasons why somebody might hire this premises or make use of this premises for parties and functions. And that is why we ask, and it is quite common for us to ask for these different risk assessments. Whilst they might seem on the face of it to be onerous, it's really important to us that license holders ensure that they formalise their risk assessments. I don't want anybody becoming complacent when it comes to assessing the need for SIA, ensuring that they've got a dispersal policy that remains fit for purpose based on the concerns that are raised frequently or otherwise by residents, and to make sure that staff remain up to date with their training. That's really important. The pub watch one, we could spend the next hour debating that, whether or not that's appropriate, and I'm going to leave that with the members and Miss McNamara to determine whether that's appropriate. But you will see it featured on many premises licenses throughout the BCP area, and it's caused very little concern. I will refer back to the premises license holder condition that we've requested. I know that Mr. Woolsgrove alluded to the challenges of having somebody there constantly. I think we're less concerned with the need to have a premises license, personal license holder present for the lunchtime Sunday lunches, for example, that's proposed to be offered. We're more concerned that we need to have somebody there who is able to manage the licensable activities sufficiently with the full knowledge and appreciation of the conditions and the impact of breaching those conditions could have on the license, and ensuring that, more importantly, that the licensing objectives, so let's forget the conditions for a moment and think more broadly with regards to the licensing objectives, to make sure that they are consistently being promoted. So we would welcome a risk assessment on that regard as well. So it may well be that rather than a blanket requirement for a personal license holder, that it may be risk assessed for functions, etc. And that really sort of concludes my input for today, because I hopefully that you've got as much information as you need from the paperwork that you've received. I just want to finish by saying that everything that we have done, and I think I can speak both for Sarah Rogers, who's not here today, and for environmental health that will be speaking to you shortly, but everything that we've been doing is either in response to complaints that we've received from the community, but more so to try and promote this club to continue in a way that is both sustainable and delivers a positive impact to the local community. We don't want it to be a blight for the residents, and we don't want residents to be concerned week to week as to how their lives will be impacted by whatever functions taking place. The conditions that we've put forward and mediated, and I'm aware that environmental health have done that separately as well, are all intended to provide a level of consistency for the residents and confidence to the responsible authorities that we can enforce if needed, if they fail to meet these requirements, which I believe are necessary to ensure that the licensing objectives are being promoted. I'm happy to get to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sergeant Goslin. First of all, then, members. Do members have any questions for the Sergeant? Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Chair. So, Sergeant, you obviously heard from Mr. Woolsgrove that whilst he didn't want to put things in the actual document, he would adhere to like dispersal policy, like the pub watch, etc. But from your knowledge of such licenses, you would prefer that it is actually in the license, just to give that extra backing and support.
I'm grateful for you to you for raising that point, and to really touch upon what Mr. Woolsgrove has said around ensuring that licenses don't become too cumbersome. I think there is a balance to be struck, and I think where a premises is being used for such a wide variety of different purposes, you can expect there to be more conditions. If it was a straightforward pub and it was being used for the same thing day in, day out, then you would quickly see a pattern and quickly be able to determine conditions that would be fit for purpose. you can expect there to be more conditions where there is a greater variety. And to draw on that example of there being a dispersal policy, if there is no mention of it within the conditions, whilst there is the opportunity for us to review based purely on failing to promote the licensing objectives, I would much rather have the ability to require the premises license holder to complete a risk assessment and to establish themselves, based on their knowledge and experience of the club, such documents such as a dispersal policy, which are very, very common for premises of all sizes and locations. And I think for it to be enforceable, to ensure that they do complete the policy, the only way to do that would be to have it as a condition.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Sergeant. Councillor Howe.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm still a bit confused as to what the exact proposal is coming forward, because it has been amended, agreed through discussions between yourselves, and what's actually in the letter differs from what the applicant said earlier in terms of the closing hours of the sale of retail. So presumably members will be presented with a written proposal before we have to make a decision today as to what is being presented in terms of the amended application. But perhaps an officer could confirm that.
The amendments are in that table on, so that's what's the agreed amendments.
What in the table in the letter?
In the table in the document that was shared yesterday from Dorset Police.
Yeah,
in the
so,
table.
So
yeah.
that's what we'll be, because obviously that as the officer said is only a partial proposal in a partial.
Well, they're the agreed amendments, and then my understanding is the typed the bottom of page 2 and 4 are what the police are saying they would like to see if a license was granted, what they additional terms they'd like to see in it. But they haven't
because
agreed.
yeah,
I think that's my understanding.
but
yes,
it does say yeah. Sorry, just
yeah. So
point. Yeah, it does say in the first line that the retail hours will be till on Friday and Saturday. Will be till 1 o'clock. Sunday to Thursday till 1 o'clock, when the applicant said 12:30 earlier.
Yeah, so
I'm looking at the letter, yeah.
I'll ask John Walsgrove to confirm what I'm about to say as being accurate, but the information that's detailed as Miss McNamara has stipulated, that's what we've been able to mediate between ourselves, and they would form amendments to the initial application and would be incorporated prior to any application being granted. I think it would be worthy just to check that Mr. Walsgrove is in agreement with that information, but that was my understanding.
Thank you, Sergeant. Are you able to just run through those points for us, Mr. McNamara?
Certainly, Chair. So it would appear what's now been agreed is that the sale of alcohol is now till 11 of 1000 hours to 11 p.m. Sunday to Thursday, and on Saturday and Sunday 10 till midnight. Is that correct?
But Friday and Saturday 10. Friday and Saturday until midnight.
Friday and Saturday till midnight, except New Year's Eve it's 1 a.m.
Yes.
So alcohol now up to 11 Sunday to Thursday, up to midnight Friday and Saturday, 1 a.m. on New Year's Eve. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I'll just ask Mr. Walsgrove to confirm.
Yeah, if I can just chip in here. So when I made my representations and said how we were amending it. That's exactly what I said. The alcohol hours were to be amended to. What Sergeant Gosling hasn't done, because we didn't have time to discuss this, is mention anything about the other licensable activities that we'd apply for, because obviously his main issue is crime and disorder relating to the consumption of alcohol. So having agreed to his hours on the alcohol, I have put forward amended hours on all the other activities, because there's no point us having or applying for regulated entertainment in the forms of films, performance of dance, indoor sports and late night refreshment beyond the hours that we're going to actually be open. So although in Sergeant Gosling's letter, he's only put alcohol hours, I have run through all the other amendments for late night refreshment, films, performance of dance and indoor sports, so that they tie in with that agreement on the alcohol. Other than, of course, because it's not controversial, we've asked for those activities to go until the closing hour of 11:30 Sunday to Thursday and midnight midnight Friday, Saturday, which I didn't have the chance to discuss with Sergeant Gosling, but I'm sure he doesn't have any objections to us changing all those activities to tie in with the alcohol hours. I hope that's made it a bit clearer, because I think that's where the confusion may have come. I mentioned so many different activities and different amendments to hours, but in that letter it only mentions alcohol. We are offering everything else to change as well.
Thank you, Mr. Wargrove.
So sorry, just to be clear, so everyone's clear. So all the other licensable activities that you've listed in your application, save the alcohol, will now run till Thursday and Sunday to Thursday. Can you confirm what time? Yes, 11:30.
11:30 and Friday, Saturday,
Saturday.
12:30. New Year's Eve stays as 1 o'clock.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, if I could just, it seemed that the officer was reading off a different letter than I was, because the table I have does say till 1 o'clock Saturday and Sunday.
That was what was in the left-hand column is what was in our application originally.
Okay.
And the right-hand column is what we've mediated. So it says
Okay,
1
all right,
o'clock on the left-hand column, because that's what we'd originally applied for.
Yeah, okay.
And also I think the one exceptional 100 hours for New Year's Eve, maybe that's throwing it slightly. I think it's just the wording. It says reduction by 1 hour rather than setting the times. It's sort of self-calculating.
Yeah, sorry, it's just being stupid. Sorry.
That's all, Councillor.
But my question that I wanted to get onto was, I don't. Is this a community centre essentially, or a club, or is it a commercial premises selling of alcohol? It seems to me that I'm very much I don't want to impose like unnecessary, costly requirements on a community facility that could potentially prevent it from being viable. But we must have appropriate regulation of premises that are more in the sphere of selling alcohol to the public. And it would seem to me that an alternative way of addressing that and reaching that point is to have reasonable hours for the sale of alcohol. And it seems to me, having somebody that lives in a town centre and has dealt with a lot of these kind of late night issues as a ward councillor, is that the hours that people leave the premises are absolutely critical in terms of the amenity of the local residents. And the best way of dealing with potential problems is to have a reasonable hour and that people aren't leaving the premises at a time when people are trying to sleep.
That's right. If I could just jump in on that, Chair. I completely agree with everything that you've said there, and it's around the vast majority of complaints and concerns that we receive, certainly with regards to premises in the Winton, Charminster, and other areas that have a broad mix of residential and commercial properties, including late night premises, is not in relation to what happens inside the venue. It's ensuring that when it comes to the conclusion of the event or the evening, that the safe dispersal of people and the quiet dispersal of people from the premises is achieved. Now, that's often achieved through a combination of notices when people leave. They're quite practical measures, and they can and have been conditioned to licenses in the past. Yeah, sort of measures like that. But where we have asked for a dispersal policy to be incorporated as a condition, that gives that flexibility and invites the license holder to draw upon their knowledge and their experience of that premises. So they're the ones that will be there more often, receiving the feedback from neighbours, receiving feedback from their customers, and they will know what's achievable and proportionate with regards to minimising the disturbance to the locals as people leave. So that's where having a dispersal policy that might be for one premises half a page long, it might be for another premises, you know, a book that needs to be put in a ring binder. It varies from premises to premises, but ensuring that premises license holders have to consider that, we consider is really quite important for premises of this type. I think with regards to the hours, I think that is certainly one for yourselves. We have mediated those hours down, and I'm grateful for Mr. Walsgrove to have agreed that on behalf of his client. It would be for you to determine whether they continue to be appropriate, and perhaps once you've spoken to or had the representations given verbally from the residents and from Mr. Weems, that might be something that might impact that decision.
Thank you. And I have another question, which is in relation to the timings that a personal license holder should be present. Has that been agreed?
No, it hasn't. So that was one of the areas that we've had a difference of view on with Mr. Walsgrove. So Mr. Walsgrove has put forward a perfectly reasonable argument that it would be an onerous requirement for a premises of this type to have the need for a personal license holder to be present. In short, the reason that we've asked for that to be in place on the license, whether it's a permanent feature but perhaps not needed for, as we talked about with the Sunday lunches, etc., but maybe it's a requirement for when there are functions taking place or where there's licensable activity beyond a certain hour. I would ask that you would consider the necessity for that as to whether or not you think it would be proportionate. We contest that it is needed, certainly on more higher risk occasions, such as late night functions.
So just to dig into that a bit, so obviously, as you just said, we could say that between certain hours in the evening, perhaps that the license holder should be present. But the issue of that, I suppose, is that there may be times when it's empty and they still have to find somebody to do that. You know, is it possible to regulate it in terms of, you know, the number of people that, you know, are physically in the room at that time, or is that? I don't think
you would need to concern yourselves a great deal with that. If you did, as Mr. Walsgrove suggested for another reason, whereby he mentioned the value that you can draw from the experience and qualifications of the personal license holder or the premises license holder in Cerise and her experience, in that I would be more than happy for it to be risk assessed by them as to the need for a personal license holder. Now, naturally, there may be occasions when the operator, Cerise, might determine that there is no need for a personal license holder. Now, that would then effectively be documented, albeit briefly. I wouldn't expect that to be an onerous report or anything such as that, but a note as to why it's been determined that no personal license holder is required. And then if anything does happen, or we've received any calls or complaints, then that can inform her risk assessment for future events, and we can have those discussions as to how it can be best assessed in the future, which is what we do in our engagement with all license holders throughout the county.
Okay, thank you. So you're saying that in as far as you're concerned, we don't need to have a condition about there being a personal license holder on the premises, as long as the risk assessment requirements is included.
I think
But
that
then-
would be up to the committee to decide when we retire, Councillor Howell.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, I think it may be worth, so obviously in the document that was produced, Dorset Police were, their position was premises a personal license holder be present, but what's also being suggested today is that perhaps Dorset Police would be satisfied if there was a condition that a risk assessment be for a personal license holder to be present, so that risk assessment be carried out by the operator. So I think it's probably worth asking Mr. Walsgrove what his view on that is, so that at least the members can consider what everyone's view is on that. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. McNamara. Mr. Walsgrove, did you want to comment on that particular point at all?
Very briefly, I think I said in my presentation, that is something which Cerise would obviously do on an ongoing basis in terms of, you know, assessing each event or a Friday and Saturday night, whatever they're doing for the members, as to what staff need to be present. So if you are minded to add on any condition regarding personal license holders, I would certainly suggest endorsing Sergeant Gosling's view that the license holder carrying out a risk assessment for any private function or on a Friday and Saturday evening, because obviously that's when we've got the later drinking hours, for a personal license holder to be present. As I said, those are things, all of the things that he's asked for are things that my client would be doing in any event. It's just a question really of whether you feel there's a need to have them as conditions or not. If they're imposed as conditions, then obviously, you know, my client will comply with them, because, as I said before, there will be all of that documentation, dispersal policies, risk assessments for door supervisors, and the risk assessment for a personal license holder.
Thank you, Mr. Walsgrove. Did members have any further questions for Sergeant Gosling at all? No. Mrs. McNamara.
Chair, so Sergeant Gosling, it was just going back to, we had discussions earlier on about the defined spaces where alcohol could be consumed outside, and Mr. Walsgrove was of the view that that was within that those spaces were in the red line on the original plan, and it was just for you to clarify, is that Dorset Police's view as well?
Yes, thank you. So one of the key amendments was the removal of off sales from the licence, and I'm grateful to Mr. Walsgrove for having agreed that. I think we try and balance that with the need, certainly during the summer months and for smoking purposes, etc., that there is commonly an outside area associated with a licensed premises, whether that be a beer garden or something similar. With regards to this particular site, I am very familiar with the site, having been there multiple times. There is a very clear defined seating area, which I understand is going to be developed further. But that area itself, we would be happy with as a reasonable space for the consumption of alcohol as part of the premises, the definition of the premises. So hopefully that clarifies that for you.
Yes, thank you, Sergeant. Right. objectors attending the Teams meeting this morning, is there anyone wishes to ask Sergeant Gosling any questions at all? No, in which case then, can I move on and ask Andrew Wimmis to make his representation to the committee, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've been asked this morning to present the Environmental Health Department's representation against the premises licence application for Bournemouth Electric Club. The actual case officer who's had all the involvement with this is a Mr. Hill. He's not here this week, so I've said that I'd take his place, and I'm making the representation on behalf of the department. I wish to be respectful of the time of this committee, Chair, and therefore would not wish to repeat all the information Mr. Hill has submitted in his initial representation against the premises, but I would like to highlight a few key points for the benefit of the committee. In June 2021, BCP's Council's Environmental Health team received a number of complaints from local residents regarding noise from events held at Bournemouth Electric Club. These complaints were investigated and resulted in a number of interventions involving colleagues from the Environmental Health team, Dorset Police, as well as BCP Council's licensing team. Local residents were so concerned regarding the operation of the premises and the impact that this was having on their properties that they contacted their local MP to express concern, who then notified us of the ongoing disturbances attributed to the club and requested that further investigations be taken. On the 16th of May 2023, Mr. Hill, Sergeant Gosling and Sarah Rogers from BCP Counselling Licensing attended a meeting at the premises as the licence holder had gone insolvent and therefore the premises licence had lapsed. This premises therefore no longer could hold events and had to operate under the club premises certificate that we've been discussing earlier. Therefore, events held at the premises were curtailed somewhat, and this resulted in a marked reduction in complaints, which is why earlier on I was trying to sort of clarify what this situation is, because when we've seen the club operate under club premises certificates, we've had fewer complaints than when it's been operating under a license. The most recent complaint was received on Monday the 11th of December regarding an event that was held by this applicant on the 9th of December. This is very recently, which was also mentioned earlier, and that resulted in disturbance once again to local residents. I believe Mr. Hill has provided a substantial amount of information in his representation in regards to the interventions since 2021 involving not only this department but also Dorset Police and the BCP licensing team, and I've no doubt the committee will consider this in their deliberations. To be clear, we believe that Bournemouth Electric Club is not a suitable events venue, as it has been proven in the past that it cannot operate as a premises holding events without impacting upon local residents. We believe Bournemouth Electric Club should continue to operate as a members-only club. The venue has an ample opportunity to demonstrate that events can be held without impacting upon the community and has thus far failed to do so. And I'm willing to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wimmis. Members, do you have any questions for the officer at all? Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Mr. Wimmis. The point that Mr. Walsgrove said about accepting all your terms on page 41 about locking windows, etc. Does that change your view at all? Thank you.
Our view is that, and I would have come on to this anyway in the summing up, is that our view is still against the granting of this license. However, we accept that the committee may choose to grant the license, and that's why Andrew Hill has suggested a number of conditions that we would seek to have on the license if it were granted. So yeah, today I've learned from Mr. Walsgrove that he's very happy to accept all of those conditions that we've suggested should the license be granted, and you know that's our stance is that yeah, we would like those attached if you do grant the license.
Okay, thanks for confirming.
Councillor Howell.
Yes, your department's submission and various objections seem to suggest that the lateness of the closure is a particular concern. You know, is that would that be fair to say that's probably the most
Yeah,
significant
absolutely. I
issue?
think yes, certainly, absolutely. As far as nuisance and prevention of public nuisance, the later that we go into the evening or the early hours of the morning, obviously the impact on the local residents is greatly increased. So anything that sort of restricts the hours in which the club will be open, we would certainly be in favour of in terms of protecting the residents from the noise, not just from the activities within the club, but also people dispersing from the area. So.
Thank you, Mr. Wimmis. Any further questions? Thank you. Are there any questions from Mr. Walsgrove at all? Not sure if Mr. Walsgrove's still with us. Sergeant Goslin, any questions at all?
No, Chair, no questions from me, but I do see that Cerise has got a hand up.
Thank you. Cerise.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Walsgrove has been kicked out of meetings, so are we able to get him back in, please? He hasn't been in for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's no
Hello?
problem. I'll call him back in now.
Hello,
Thank you.
Cerise. Yeah, we've sent another invitation, so I don't know if the problem is with Mr. Walsgrove's end or not. Not sure.
I'm not sure, but thank you very much.
Okay. So, are there any further questions from the objectors who are on the Teams meeting this morning? In which case, I will move on and invite the objectors who have requested to speak at this meeting just to show a hand on the Teams.
Just hold fire just for a minute while we try to get Mr. Walsgrove back. So obviously it is the applicant's legal right, so prudent that he hears what's being said.
I have been advised that we should wait for Mr. Walsgrove to return to the meeting, but in the meantime, if there's any one of the objectors wish to speak, could you identify yourselves, please? Cerise? Cerise, not sure if you can hear me, but are you able to contact Mr. Walsgrove at all by telephone?
Yes, of course. I'll give him a call now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just remind members that we are on live streaming. I think we'll give it a couple more minutes and hopefully Mr. Walsgrove will return.
He's up there.
Is he there? Mr. Walsgrove, are you back with us?
Hello, sorry, I'm just on the phone to him. He hasn't had another link come through.
Officers are just trying to call Mr. Walsgrove back into the meeting, Cerise.
Thank you.
Right, I think I'm back in now.
Hello, Mr. Walsgrove.
Sorry about that. Technical difficulties.
Okay, hopefully you didn't miss too much. It was a couple of questions from councillors with regards to the mediation that's taken place with the club from the environmental health.
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
I have asked the objectors if they could advise me of any who wish to speak, but nobody has actually identified themselves. Just to confirm, Mr. Walsgrove, did you have any questions for the environmental health officer at all?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Fung. You have a question, or did you wish to address the committee?
The question is right. Because I don't receive the amendment adjustment the license right now or the document because it's a lot late. I mean, probably sent through yesterday. Is that the application where I can get the information and obviously I know we still have quite a lot of amendment and adjustment during this meeting. What happened will be next? I mean, is it going to be after this meeting? Is either the application will go through or not go through, or is that a review application happen next?
I think I understand what you're saying, Mr. Fung. I'm going to ask the legal representative just to advise me where we stand with this. One moment.
Mr. Fung, the position is that the police and environmental health and the applicant have been speaking, and the applicant is now saying that they are they're reducing the hours for the sale of alcohol to 11 p.m. on a Sunday to Thursday, and Friday and Saturday to midnight, New Year's Eve to 1 a.m. and then all the other licensing activities listed on the application, the hours will be to 11:30 Sunday to Thursday, Friday and Saturday 12:30 and 1 p.m. on New Year's Eve. They've also agreed that there be no off sales. They've agreed that the CCTV will be held for 31 days, and that the consumption of alcohol is within the red line on the plan in the outside areas. They've also agreed to the terms that environmental health have put forward at page 41 of the bundle, which is in the original application pages that you should have. So that's what's been agreed. So that's what's different to the original application. That helps. So the subcommittee will consider everything in the round. Just because that's agreed between the applicant and the responsible authorities doesn't mean that's what will be decided by the subcommittee, but that's what's been said today, that the negotiations between those parties have come to an agreement on some elements of it. Some elements are still outstanding, but some elements have been agreed between them. Does that help?
Yes and no. So after no, what I'm trying to say is what happened will be next if the subcommittee disagree or
okay.
Yeah.
So the subcommittee will consider everything and come to a decision, and then that decision will be notified to all parties. that decision is appealable to the magistrates court. So I'll deal with the rights of appeal at the end of the meeting.
Right, and will we get a sort of like a like a form or because what I'm trying to say is, current situation, putting a notice on the board on the lamppost, like telling, oh, if you reject a application, is a bit I won't say outdated because a lot of people not aware the situation.
So the decision that's made will be updated on the council's website, I'm told.
Okay.
So you will be able to see what the decision is.
And Mr. Fung, I can always send you a link to the minutes once the decision has been made and published, if you'd like.
Yes, please. That would be fantastic.
No problem.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to move on to summing up. And can I ask if any of the objectors present at the meeting wish to address the committee with any items that they think has been missed or they would like us to consider in our deliberations? It looks like there's no response, so I'm going to move on to Andrew Wemyss. Would you like to sum up, please, for the committee?
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, this new premises licence will seek to effectively hand over use of the site for commercial gain by an external operator. And I see this simply as a way for the club to distance itself from its responsibility to local residents. We have found ourselves in this position before, and I cannot be seen to support an application which I know will result in the prevention of public nuisance objective being undermined, and is also likely to result in statutory nuisance. We, however, acknowledge that the committee may wish to grant approval for this application, and therefore we would request the following additional conditions to be attached to the premises licence should the committee be minded to grant this application. And to save time, I won't go through them all again because I know they've already been mentioned in the documentation and have been agreed by the applicant. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wemyss. Sergeant Goslin, did you wish to sum up at all?
Only to support really what Andy's just said there. There is that concern as to how well this premises that's proposed interacts with the local community. And we have to draw upon our experience of engaging with this particular site and more than one operator. So there has been previous license holders and the committee members itself, but there has been a common thread where there has been, in particular, noise disturbances and antisocial behaviour as well. That really fits nicely with where I believe that should the premises license be granted, we need to be confident, and you need to be confident that we, as the responsible authorities, can properly enforce conditions that you consider necessary, and that we believe, and that hopefully you'll agree, will help the license holder to promote the licensing objectives. I don't believe that what we've proposed is onerous. I hope that what we've put forward and what we've agreed in advance of this hearing support what it is that the residents have reported to us, and everything that we've been doing up till now and continue to do will continue to be in the interests of the local community. And I've got nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Goslin. Mr. Walsgrove, did you have any further information you'd like to address the committee with at all?
Yes, please, sir. Just in summing up, directly relating to the Environmental Health Officer's point about responsibility, granting this new licence does give that accountability and responsibility that perhaps has been lacking in the past where problems have arisen. If you grant the licence, you've got a very experienced licensee there who will be responsible for the licensable activities at the club. And that should give you greater confidence than refusing the licence and allowing the club to continue trying to operate by committee under the benefit of their club premises certificate. I think the applicant, my client, has been sensible in their approach in that they've listened to concerns raised and the previous history and have amended the application to cut back on hours so that there will be no potential risk for public nuisance going forward. So in all those circumstances, given the nearly 100 years of trading without problems, a couple of blips from a previous licensee who now has nothing to do with the premises, I ask you to grant the licence as amended. If you feel the conditions the police have asked for are appropriate to be endorsed, then there wouldn't be any challenge from my client. As I said, they're all steps that the responsible licensee would take. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it's taking a lot longer than probably we all thought. And also thanks to the Police Licensing Authority and Environmental Health for their previous liaison with the club and for their liaison with me throughout this application. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Walsgrove. And finally, Mrs. Randall, did you have anything further to offer the committee at all?
I think everything that's been said that needed to be. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I will now conclude the hearing. At the end of this meeting, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and clerk to deliberate. All parties may now leave and the decision will be conveyed to you in writing as explained earlier. Mrs. McNamara, did you want to add anything with regards to appeals?
Chair, I'll just reconfirm there is an appeal against any decision that's made by the subcommittee. That appeal is to the Magistrates' Court and the time frame for that is 21 days from receipt of notice in writing. That appeal is both the applicant's got the right of appeal plus anyone who's made a representation.
Thank you, Mrs. McNamara. Those on the Teams meeting are free to leave the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance this morning. Right, moving on then, members, to item 6 on this morning's agenda, Bargain Convenience Store 495 Wimborne Road, Bournemouth. The Licensing Authority has received an application to review the premises licence for the premises known as Bargain Convenience Store 1495 Wimborne Road, Bournemouth. The subcommittee is asked to adjourn this hearing until the 17th of January 2023 in accordance with the Regulations 12 of the Licensing Act 2003, Hearings Regulations 2005 to enable the relevant parties to attend. Are members in agreement?
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on then to item 7 on this morning's agenda, Nala Tapas and Cocktail Lounge 134 137 West Hill Road, Bournemouth. The Licensing Authority has received an application to review the premises licence for the premises known as Nala Tapas and Cocktail Lounge 134 137 West Hill Road, Bournemouth. The subcommittee is asked to adjourn this hearing until the 17th of January 2023 in accordance with the Regulations 12 of the Licensing Act 2003, Hearings Regulations 2005 to enable the relevant parties to attend. Are members happy to agree?
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you, members. That concludes this morning's business and I therefore close this meeting at 12:20. Thank you for your attendance.